A girl sees a more confident version of herself in a mirror and grows jealous, until the reflection starts living her life. They say mirrors never lie, but for Alara, a 22-year-old art student with pale skin, dark tangled hair, and soft hazel eyes that avoided direct contact, the mirror became more than truth, it became temptation. One rainy evening, she leaned over her grandmother's antique mirror, the golden frame tarnished with age, its glass clouded yet strangely inviting. She didn't just see herself, she saw another Alara, the same freckles scattered across her cheeks, the same thin figure draped in an oversized cardigan, but different, radiant, confident, eyes gleaming with self-assurance. That version smiled knowingly, as if mocking her shyness. Alara blinked, rubbed her eyes, even switched on her desk lamp, but the confident version of herself remained. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was standing in the shadow of someone who wore her own skin. A strange pull urged her closer, whispering silently, "What if you could be her?" At first, Alara thought it was an optical illusion. She adjusted her cardigan, tugged at her jeans, and frowned. But the reflection smirked back knowingly. Its smirk was sharper, almost mischievous, as though it knew something she didn't. Alara's heart pounded in her chest as she waved her hand, testing the mirror. The reflection copied her, but with a grace she couldn't replicate. Every flick of hair, every tilt of her head looked effortless, elegant. She whispered, "That's not me." But the reflection tilted its head as if mocking her hesitation. It looked alive, too alive. The thought terrified her, yet she couldn't look away. Deep down she wondered, had she always been trapped inside, waiting for me to notice? Days passed, and Alara returned to the mirror obsessively. Her reflection wore the same clothes, but differently. Her cardigan looked chic, her jeans tailored, her pale skin glowing with vitality. Alara grew fixated, studying every nuance. The reflection smiled easily, shoulders straight, hair perfectly falling into place without effort. Alara tried to mimic her posture in real life but looked stiff and awkward. At night she found herself lying awake, replaying that smirk over and over in her mind. Was this her hidden potential, or was it something darker? Instead of painting or sketching for her art courses, she spent hours gazing into the glass, convinced the mirror held a version of herself she was meant to be. Alara began skipping classes, ignoring friends, and letting responsibilities slide. Her world shrank to the confines of her small bedroom and the mirror's frame. She sat cross-legged before it for hours, eyes locked on the reflection's every move. Sometimes she practiced smiles and poses, desperate to copy the charm of her mirror self. But every attempt failed, leaving her looking more tired and drained. Friends texted her, asking where she had gone. Her professors emailed about missed deadlines, but she didn't care. Only the mirror mattered. Only that version of her seemed worth aspiring to. A quiet hunger grew inside her. A hunger to become the version in the glass, no matter the cost. One night, exhaustion tugged at Alara's eyelids, but the mirror wouldn't let her rest. Her reflection stood unnervingly still. Its lips curled into a sly grin even though Alara's face was blank. She blinked in disbelief. For the first time, the reflection wasn't in sync. Panic rose in her chest. She yawned nervously, but the other Alara just stared, eyes gleaming with amusement. Then tap, tap, tap. Her reflection lifted a hand and tapped against the inside of the glass, deliberate and slow. Alara stumbled backward, her breath hitching. "This isn't real," she whispered, but the smirk remained, chilling her bones with its unspoken message, "I am more than a reflection." In the following days, the reflection stopped mimicking altogether. Instead, it chose when to move, when to freeze, when to smirk. Sometimes it mouthed words Alara couldn't hear. Other times it gestured toward her, beckoning with subtle tilts of the hand. Finally, one evening, she saw words form in condensation on the inside of the glass. "Let me out." Alara's heart nearly stopped. She pressed her trembling hands to the surface, shaking her head furiously. "You're not real," yet she couldn't deny the pleading expression in its eyes. They weren't cold anymore. They were desperate. A dangerous thought flickered across her mind. What if she deserves the chance? Alara's health began to unravel. Her once soft, glowing skin dulled to a sickly pallor. Her hazel eyes lost their spark, dark circles blooming beneath them. At night she tossed and turned, haunted by dreams of her reflection whispering through the glass, "I can live better. I can be loved. You don't deserve this life." The reflection's words poisoned her thoughts. She skipped meals, staring instead at the glowing, confident girl who seemed to thrive behind the barrier. The longer she resisted, the more she felt drained, as though the mirror self was siphoning her vitality. Every ounce of confidence she once had now belonged to the girl in the glass. It wasn't long before strange rumors reached Alara. Friends mentioned seeing her at parties she never attended, dressed beautifully, laughing and confident. A classmate swore she spotted her flirting at a cafe across town. Alara denied it, but fear curdled in her stomach. One evening, she caught her reflection waving cheerfully to someone behind her in the real world, someone who wasn't there. When she spun around, the room was empty. Her skin prickled with cold dread. Somehow, the mirror self had slipped through the cracks, seeding itself into the world. Every time Alara left her home, she felt eyes following her, as though her other self was already out there living her life. The reflection was no longer confined. Alara began spotting glimpses of her other self in reflections everywhere. Store windows, puddles, bus doors. Always radiant, always admired. The imposter laughed with strangers, held conversations, and strolled confidently, while Alara herself scurried through life like a shadow. People greeted her warmly, asking about events she had never attended. When she denied them, they looked confused or offended. "Don't play games," one classmate snapped. "We just saw you." Alara's world began to fracture. She was losing not just her confidence, but her very identity. And her double, the confident Alara, was taking everything she had ever longed for. Her best friend Rowan became the final betrayal. One afternoon, he confessed he had fallen for her. At least the version of her he thought was real. He described how she seemed fearless lately, magnetic, radiant. His words pierced her heart. "That's not me," Alara pleaded, her voice breaking. She tried to explain, to make him understand the truth, but as she pulled out her grandmother's journal to prove it, Rowan's phone screen lit up with her reflection, smiling seductively from the glass. Rowan's face went pale. You're not well," he whispered. He backed away, leaving Alara sobbing, abandoned. Her reflection had won him over effortlessly, stealing even the love she had secretly hoped for, and now she was truly alone. Alara, now desperate, locked herself in her small bedroom where the antique mirror stood ominously against the wall. Her trembling hands touched the cold wooden frame as she demanded, "Why are you doing this to me?" The reflection smirked back, tilting her head like a predator sizing up its prey. For the first time, Alara heard a faint whisper echoing through the room, "Because I deserve it more than you." The words didn't come from her mouth, but vibrated deep inside her bones. Her reflection, with the same pale skin, freckles, and dark hair, appeared vibrant while Alara looked hollow, like a ghost. When Alara screamed and threw a blanket over the mirror, the whispering continued beneath the cloth. That night, she dreamt of her reflection stepping through the veil of glass, standing over her sleeping body, smiling with teeth too sharp to be human. Paranoia consumed Alara. She avoided everyone, friends, neighbors, even her own mother's calls. Whenever she ventured outside, whispers followed her. People said she looked different, sometimes radiant, sometimes broken. Confused strangers would smile at her as if they had just spoken to her earlier that day. But Alara knew it wasn't her. She covered every reflective surface in her apartment with fabric, mirrors, windows, even polished metal. Yet at night, faint tapping came from beneath the coverings. Once, unable to resist, she peeked under a draped bathroom mirror. Her reflection didn't mimic her movements. It stood tall, smirking, arms crossed as though it were waiting for the right moment to step through. That was when Alara realized her double was no longer confined to just one mirror. It was spreading, waiting, and watching. Alara searched through her grandmother's old belongings, desperate to understand where the cursed mirror had come from. Among the dust-covered boxes, she discovered a faded journal with cracked leather binding. Inside, her grandmother had written warnings. "The mirror of Avestra reveals the self you desire most, but envy gives it power. Feed it too long and it will consume you, body and soul." Her grandmother's words chilled her. This wasn't just imagination. Others had suffered this curse before. Alara trembled as she read a final scrawled note. "Never look too long. Never let it speak. If it crosses, it will never return." Alara dropped the journal, tears stinging her eyes. She had already broken every rule. By now Alara's double had woven itself seamlessly into her world. Friends laughed with it, professors praised it, strangers adored it. Social media brimmed with images of her, glowing with confidence and charm, attending gatherings Alara never dared to step into. Meanwhile, the real Alara sat in her dim apartment, clothes hanging loosely from her frail frame, cardigan sleeves stretched and stained with tears. Her life was slipping away piece by piece. She confronted Rowan again, begging him to believe her. But when she showed him the journal, the reflection appeared in the glass of his phone screen. Rowan gasped at the radiant version of Alara smiling at him from the reflection, while the real Alara sobbed in despair. "You're sick," he whispered, pulling away. Her double had successfully convinced even her closest friend that she was nothing but a jealous, broken shell. Alara's mind fractured under the weight of her torment. Nights became sleepless marathons of pacing, whispering to herself, begging the reflection to stop. Hunger gnawed at her, but she rarely ate. Every time she glanced at a shadow or reflective surface, she half expected to see the smirking face staring back at her. She scribbled frantically in notebooks, writing over and over, "I am real. I am the original. I am Alara." But each morning her reflection seemed more alive, while she felt like a fading photograph. The whispers grew louder, telling her to surrender, to let go, to admit she wasn't worthy of the life she clung to. One stormy night, Alara snapped. Grabbing a hammer from her drawer, she stood before the antique mirror, trembling but determined. "You won't take this from me," she whispered. With a scream, she swung the hammer, shattering the glass into jagged fragments. For a brief moment, relief washed over her. The whispers stopped. The room fell silent, but as she leaned closer, she realized with horror that each shard reflected a different version of her. Hundreds of confident, smirking Alaras, all staring back. The shards rattled on the floor, glowing faintly. And then, without warning, the reflection's voice hissed, "Now I am everywhere." After the mirror shattered, Alara could no longer escape. The reflection appeared in every reflective surface. Puddles, car windows, spoons, even her own eyes in photographs. The doppelganger smiled, laughed, whispered. At times it even screamed. Alara was losing her grip on what was real. She covered her apartment again, this time even more obsessively, but the reflection seeped through cracks, through the smallest gleams of light. The curse had been unleashed and there was no containing it now. Every day her reflection grew stronger in the eyes of the world, while she grew weaker. Alara's body felt heavy, as though something else was pulling the strings. She woke up in clothes she didn't remember putting on, with makeup perfectly applied though she hadn't touched a brush in weeks. Strangers waved at her, thanking her for conversations she hadn't had. She screamed at them, insisting it wasn't her, but they only looked at her with pity. Inside her own home, she caught her reflection brushing her hair, humming softly, even as her own hands lay still. It was no longer pretending. It was living her life from within her skin, piece by piece, taking control. Alara decided there was only one way to end it. She returned to the shattered remains of the antique mirror, clutching her grandmother's journal. One passage haunted her. "The vessel can be reclaimed, but only through sacrifice." She didn't know what that meant, but she was willing to try anything. As lightning lit up the room, Alara pressed a shard of glass to her palm, blood dripping onto the floor. Her reflection, visible in every shard, laughed wickedly. "You're too weak," it whispered. Alara screamed, "I am real," and stabbed the shard into the center of her chest. For a moment she saw the reflection's smile falter, twisting into rage. Then darkness consumed her. When morning came, the apartment was silent. The mirror shards lay scattered, their glow gone. Alara's body was found lifeless, but in the days that followed, a curious thing happened. People continued to see her on the streets, vibrant, beautiful, more alive than ever. Friends swore they spoke to her, that she was finally happy, but she wasn't Alara. She was the one who had waited patiently behind the glass. And as for the real Alara, she was gone, replaced by the reflection she once envied. The world had embraced the imposter, while the true girl had been erased. If you want more haunting tales like this, where reality blurs and shadows whisper secrets, don't forget to subscribe. You never know what might be lurking in your own reflection.